we feel really good that we looked virtually at every possible bit of data that we had, and you know, again, all you can do is speculate. They're talking that Montana, uh, the apex of this statistically is going to be sometime in December. So our numbers are going to continue to go up, and I'm certainly hoping, like we all are, hope the high schools make it. I mean, there's a bit of a difference. Not to say that anybody's immune from this, but you've got you've got um, you've got people going home to mom and dad in the high school, whereas you have the communal living that goes with the college situation. And I get it. It's probably a little bit more haphazard in the sense that you've got people living on top of people, if you will, and sharing dining areas and so on. Not to say the colleges haven't done a great job in their preparation, and I would tell you that every group that we had working collectively, our trainers association, our athletic directors, our presidents. I mean, they just did a wonderful job. But it just came down to looking at the trends, but also looking at, could you actually stage an event like football? And some of the counties, and good for them. I mean, they're holding to 50 as your number. Well, that's one sideline in football. I just applaud the Frontier for trying. They really did. I guess if you wanted to look at it as vacillating back and forth or positions, you can paint that picture. But the reality is that we were wanting to continue to look at all possibilities and make this thing work. And no matter what lever you pull, there's always something good can come out of it. And getting our 3 schools back now, hopefully Oregon, Idaho, Montana will all have a environment in which we can safely play in the spring. Another silver lining is that we're going to know soon. The NAI, I'm told by people that are on those committees, we're going to have a release, a guidelines release from the NAI next Thursday with regards to, they've firmed up the sites, and I don't know if there's going to be change to the sites or they were able to manipulate schedules to get the arenas and stadiums freed up for a spring championship. But we're going to know on the 20th, I believe, that's a Thursday, we're going to know where we're going and the dates of the championship, and then you can start building your schedules backwards. And I mean, there's no doubt about it, as some of the coaches have talked already, you're going to run into, in Montana and all your northern tier states, you're going to run into a situation where there's no guarantee of weather in March. And then you've got to also get your players ready, like we're doing now. You got to get your players ready. So there's the advantages, disadvantages, certainly, but I just want people to know that the various groups in the Frontier Conference really worked hard at making this happen. I know the student athletes know that as well. And at the end of the day, we just felt like collectively the presidents had to make a decision. We hope that the students now coming back to campus, we hope it's a healthy startup, certainly. And right now we're still looking at cross country and golf, but just like we've done with volleyball and football, we're keeping our options open, because you just can't paint yourself into a corner, and the picture always changes.
Were they torn? I mean, you guys have had so many conversations, obviously, and keep looking at all the data and stuff that comes in. Was it just kind of that final straw, like you're talking about, with some of the counties and some of the city? There's just so much. There's so much difference between what one school can allow, and I know the high school is having a hard time with that right now too. Is
Yeah.
This school might not be allowed to have fans, and then when you just take all your games on the road at that point instead. Was it a long conversation, I guess, that final one, or was it just kind of trending that way over the past couple of weeks even.
No, I would characterize our meeting as being very similar to the ones that we've had weekly leading up. Our COP very very meticulous, very organized. Certainly, everybody having input. Players as student athletes were also as students coming back to the campuses. If you remember, we had pushed things back 1 week for our start date because we wanted a little extra time for acclimation for both school and the gridiron. I think the determining factor is that our presidents and our athletic directors listened certainly to the medical people in their counties, and we knew that there was, counties were at different places, just like states were at different places, but they just finally reached that point where there was going to be no fans. I mean, that was a given. We'd already crossed that bridge. And then it just kind of came down to the idea of could you stage an event where some counties were saying that their number, at least the projected number at this time, was 50 people. Well, that's 25 aside. You got officials in there. Pretty soon you're talking about two teams of literally teens of numbers, and it just wasn't doable. And so yeah, you move to the next chapter, and you make it be the very very best experience that you can for the students. And we know this is anything but normal.
Spring. Everybody's biggest question, I think, is when is spring, so to speak. And I know if the NAIA releases this is when our championships are going to be, that probably makes it easier to backtrack and say if we have 9 games or 8 games, we would need to start here. Could you potentially start sooner than that if things in Montana are looking better than they are elsewhere, maybe to guarantee some games? Or what does spring mean, I guess, for those folks that are kind of asking that question?
Well, yeah, I think it's safe to say that we're defining it as sometime after January 1, nationwide. Now in Montana, some of the old timers would tell you that spring comes sometime right after the 4th of July. But realistically, we know we've played football in November and early December. So I don't see us being able to, best case scenario, if Mother Nature gave us a break here, you're probably most likely, just speculating when the NAI is going to try to place their championships. I would think that we'd have games in March and April. Can you clear a field in March like you clear a field in November? The issue becomes for non-turf fields. Now you got melt, you got sloppy conditions, whereas in the fall you're coming on that first snow. It's a different look. There's no doubt about it. The other thing that we've talked about is now how do you get the players ready to play an outdoor sport, but yet you're most likely indoors for those first month. So right now, if you go way back to us discussing the what ifs back in March and April of last spring, one of the lead topics was, well, essentially you'll have spring football that you didn't get in the spring, we'll have it in the fall. And so you're seeing a lot of our programs that were set to go. They're basically doing spring ball now in the interim this fall, which will lead into winter conditioning, which will lead into your question of when when does the calendar say it's spring? But that's going to clear up. We're gonna get a better handle on things, and again, back to the we can do mentality that you just have to have, and you're gonna make it. We certainly discussed very very much a discussion point is who's to say it's going to be better in the spring? Again, we're living in this we don't know world, but you just have to keep working at it. You just have to keep grinding, and that's what everybody's doing.
We also discussed challenges. I know you guys were really trying like heck to play in the fall to avoid the challenges of weather, obviously being one, venues being one, crossover athletes being one. have they discussed anything of shifting maybe some of the other spring seasons to still allow for some of that, or is it still planning on probably going on? Like, how do we deal with some of those challenges of the football or volleyball player that also runs the hurdles or whatever it might be, or
Yeah.
plays softball maybe or something like that?
Yeah, the at our level in the NAI, which is one of the beauties of our level, big enough but yet small enough. We have basketball players that are also jumpers in track. I mean, in the day, Frontier Conference outdoor track and field were made up of your specialists who were your distance runners, and then your football and your basketball players were your track team. And it'll evolve that same way. I know the students organization has appealed to the NAI. I think they've made a good point. Is they're saying, we understand, you've moved the fall to the spring. Let's not forget about the sanctity of the spring championships. And their feeling was, or their recommendation to the NAI was, is that we should try to pick dates as long as it's doable and in the sense of the facilities being available. We should try to stage what would have been your fall championships before we do the spring championships. Now, to your question, do we flex the spring championships slightly later to make room for these preceding fall championships? I don't know. I guess we're going to find out when they release that next Thursday. But certainly they understand volleyball, of course, being an indoor sport. You're going to have some overlap with basketball. The one thing there is that if they leave basketball dates the same, the winter sports, we're actually a week earlier. We were scheduled to finish our conference season on the 20th of February, whereas normally basketball we finish the last weekend in February. But with the move to the one division, they needed a bit of a revamped timetable so that teams could get from their playoff site to the national sites at Sioux City and Kansas City. So if the winter sports stay the same, you're going to have a bit of an overlap, certainly with volleyball, basketball. But if you recall, we've done that we've done that drill before, and it's just going to involve flexibility from the coaches, athletic directors. Again, you're going to make it work. Football, being an outdoor sport, you're going to have that overlap with track and field. And like you said, you may have some kids that normally they're dual sport athletes, but they're not doing the two sports at the same time. I think the closest we've ever come to that is a soccer kicker also kicking on the football team, that the seasons are going simultaneously. But our kids are as flexible and resilient as the people working behind the scenes to make this happen. So again, we're going to make it happen.
Just real quick, has there even been discussions about winter, serious ones yet, or are we've got to focus on figuring out what's happening right now?
I think the way it's worked is that right after the first of the year, or first of the month, I should say, of July, right after the 4th of July, I know the NAI was starting to cast an eye from the legislative services. They were looking at the winter sports, but as time has gone on, and with trying to button up the fall sports championships, they didn't release anything. But I think you're going to see something soon then about the winter sports, because we're due to play our first non-conference games on the 15th of October. So it isn't like you've got a lot of lead time. You've got to make those same decisions for your winter sports for your coaches. I mean, it's very obvious that our basketball coaches do a great job in assembling a 17 game non-conference schedule, but the proximity to us out west, we rely on the states of Utah, the states of Texas, Arizona, California, Washington, Oregon. So we may have some problems, in terms of can we get in those states to play, and then more so, are we willing to go into those states and play? And so, your non-conference schedule could very well be altered because we're looking at October, November, December primarily for that. But that's the next thing that we're going to be tackling once we can button up fall sports schedules, then we're on to the winter sports. And like I've said before to you, Richie, sometime we're going to be doing this interview sometime next fall, and we're going to be going, wow, this is easy compared to what we just came through.
Fingers are crossed for that.
Yeah, aren't we all certainly wanting to believe that? That's for sure. Yeah.
One final question about that, because I know another concern that I see brought up. We're playing football in the spring, maybe into May or June or whatever it is that the NAIA decides for postseason and stuff. And then if things go back to quote unquote normal and we're starting up again in August to play in that fall, are there concerns about that short time off? You know that there can't be time off if you're already prepping for that next season. I mean, that goes on all summer anyways. Is that a concern that the Frontier or the NAIA has discussed at all?
We've discussed it, absolutely. You keep trying to look at the next chapter of the book, certainly. And, it's kind of like the old lunch pail job that we all had in college. You got the long change, and then you got the short change on your schedule. And that's exactly what we have now is the long change, short change. And again, we have that creativity at our fingertips. We can certainly tailor our conditioning and so on. Football is a sport where those student athletes need time to have their body to rest up. And so I think that what you will see is you'll see modified preparation. But again, the love of the sport trumps anything that we can do as far as moderation in our scheduling, and we'll make it happen. Maybe we don't start quite as early in August. Maybe we flex that schedule a little bit to make up for. I don't know how deep that we'll actually be going. We need for the full 16 team playoff with the round of 16 and the quarterfinals and semifinals and championship. And so I'm just guessing that we won't have football go much deeper than the end of May. I don't see them putting it into June because just like we look at a southern climate in December to stage our national championship, you kind of reach that point if you're going to go into the south and southeast where it could get too hot. And so you've got weather then that becomes a factor along with COVID. And so just working around a lot of things. But again, I just know in my heart that the student athletes know that everybody is working to make this a best case scenario, because you may have an opinion one way or the other, or a wish list one way or the other, but at the end of the day, we're just trying to do things the right way.
And then those are the questions that I've seen. Are there any other common questions that you guys have been receiving that you'd like to clean up or shore up? Any misconfusion or anything like that?
No, I think what people want, and you've heard this comment. Once a decision is made, everybody is saying, I may not agree, or my wish would be that we would have done something different. But what they do appreciate is the clarity. Now we know. You've heard that from the student athletes. You've heard that from the coaches. And so I think once the NAI gets these dates out, these spring dates for our fall championships, and our teams of athletic directors are standing ready to drop schedules into those time frames, I think that'll do a lot just to assure confidence. And then we move on, and eventually we have a sense of clarity. We've already got the 21 schedules on the books. They were basically they were a mirror of the 20. And so we're probably in a lot of cases going to look at taking what we had originally pre-COVID for 20 and kick it to 21 and then match it to 22. So here we go from a day by day, minute by minute, hour by hour change environment to, hey, we're a couple years out. We're sitting good. We're ready. So let's get back to the real world, right?